Hi, everyone. Oh my goodness, I'm so touched by all of those words, and thank you to Rachel and all the staff at Atlantic University and the A.R.E. For your support through this time, and also my mentors for the project, Lloyd Auerbach and Dr. Bunny Payne-Clemet. I'm overwhelmed with emotion at the moment, so pardon me while I collect myself. So we're here today for me to present my final project. It was really a remarkable experience. I named it Omnifluence, Motivating Evolution Through Experience. There were all of these stories that I was hearing from people about how their life was changed through different things that happened to them, and I wanted to find out more about it. So I wondered, have you ever thought to yourself, oh, I knew that was going to happen? Or have you ever had a feeling and thought, I'm going to make a decision based on that? Or have you had someone you love come and visit you, but it was after they died? Well, that's these types of experiences that we're going to investigate today. So, exceptional human experiences. These questions we're going to answer. And as Lloyd said, there's a different lens through which people see after they have these. Everything changes. So as a definition, Rhea White defined them as anomalous experiences that a person cannot forget, that have a hidden meaning for them, and that also changes the identity of the person and actually brings them to their full human potential, which is a really incredible definition. We think to ourselves, oh my gosh, I want that to happen to me, right? And we have incredible things happen to us all of the time. So what's the difference with them? Well, Rhea White went on to explain that exceptional experiences, or EEs, are something that's sticky. They stay with us. Like, wow, I remember when I galloped on a horse for the first time and I felt that exhilaration. Or I remember when I passed my nursing board exam and I was able to practice nursing. Really incredible, always with me. Alternately, an exceptional human experience, or EHE, is something that forever changes you. It's sticky, but there's a shift, as if something gets switched on inside of you, and you are forever changed. Like for me, I remember when I had my first clairvoyant dream. I also remember when my great-grandmother came and visited me and comforted me about something, gave me a very important message 15 years after she died. So clearly, these experiences literally have the power to lift us up. They transform us, they raise our potential, they raise our awareness, they raise our compassion. So some examples from the EHE.org, which is managed by the Parapsychology Foundation. This is just a very short list. There's actually like 500 on their page. The important thing to remember is that even if it is only for a breath, that can change you. It doesn't have to be some big, long, all day, all week, all year thing. You don't even have to go to the other side of the world, actually. Sometimes we pass by ourselves without even seeing ourselves, St. Augustine said. So we've answered the what. We've looked at some terms and some examples. And we're going to be answering these other questions shortly. But first, we have to honor the personal spirit. I have to tell you, there were 142 people who volunteered their stories, and I was so honored to bear witness to every single one of them. So with that in mind, I'd like to present one of the first ones that I received back when I started the survey, and it really blew my mind. So let's settle in and just breathe with me, and let's listen.
I was 8 years old. I was in my bedroom and heard my mom and sister scream from the living room. I was scared and hid under my covers. I heard a voice say, "You need to go in there." I did not want to go into the living room, but I peeked out from my covers. There was a beautiful angel, pinkish purple, and I could see through her form. She put her wings around me and said, "It's okay. All will be okay." Then I heard my father yelling and my mother and sister crying. The angel nudged me, and I went to the living room. My mother and sister were against the wall, covering their faces. My father was pointing a shotgun towards them. He turned around and saw me. He told me to get over there with them. I started crying, and he screamed at me. Then I saw the same angel behind my mom and sister with her wings around them. She smiled at me and motioned for me to come. I walked over and stood with my mother and sister, and the angel held us all. We were all crying, but I felt an odd sense of peace. My father raised the gun, and I remember thinking that I did not want to die yet, but I was also okay with it. I watched the gun, and I watched my father. I started to close my eyes, but then glimpsed something out of the corner of my eye. I saw a huge wolf-type dog run and jump on my father, and it knocked into the gun. The gun pointed up and went off. My father fell. My mother grabbed us and took us out of the house. I kept asking my mother, "Where is the dog?" She kept saying, "There is no dog." But I kept asking. I knew that the wolf dog saved me. I've remembered this all my life. The experience opened up the magical realms for me. It developed a sense of faith in the divine and of God for me, and I knew from that day on that there were angels.
So I think we can all agree that is a really profound and powerful story. And I can also assure you that's a true story. The person that had this experience went on to literally live this vision. And for the last 40 years, she has touched thousands of people directly and indirectly through her musical ministry, her healing work, wolf conservation, and nature education. Through her, this experience motivated evolution. And when I'm talking about evolution, I don't mean the Darwinian biological evolution. I'm talking about from the Latin word evolutio, meaning that which opens or unrolls. I'd like you to think about actually with that story, if there's some part of you that was touched or feels familiar or that feels tight, maybe something needs to be opened. Edgar Cayce was once asked, "What can I do to use my unfoldment for others?" And he said, "Give out. Even as you've received, give unto others." So now we'll get into the data. So the survey was called Your Exceptional Human Experience. As I said, 142 people participated, and all questions were optional. Participation was completely voluntary. So my data sets, I had 3 of them. Group 1 was my family and friends, my trial run tribe, people that I literally sent emails to and said, "This is what I'm trying to do." And if they were interested, they participated. Group 2 were online contacts. There was an anonymous link through Facebook, my personal Facebook page, as well as the Atlantic University Facebook page. And group 3 was random US. I had the survey link sent out to people across the US. I have no idea who they are, no affiliation at all. So groups 1 and 2 were kind of more similar in the spiritual seeking nature. Group 3, I had no idea. Very important to observe what emerges with all of this data. I did develop 7 hypotheses, and I tested all of the results against the hypotheses. But since we're on a time limit today, we're going to be looking at only the most significant results with those 7 hypotheses. Thomas Kuhn says it's so important to pay attention to the things that are different so that we can see that actually a new phenomena is emerging. So number 1, I figured that if anyone participated, they would have had at least one exceptional human experience. When asked the question, 34% said greater than 10, 24% said none or not sure, and I was actually shocked by this. I had no idea that that would be one of the results. So I broke it down into groups. So group 1 had up to and more than greater than 10. Group 2 was anywhere between 1 and greater than 10, and group 3 was from the not sure or none up to 4. So I was really glad that I did not just focus on one group, that I did have this balanced survey population, and that we have a big picture. And I thought that the older we get, the more profound our experiences become. And people be like, yes, I've had that experience. As I've gone here or done this. It would just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So the fewest number of results would be in the under 18 age range. But actually, that was not correct. The stories that people shared, the majority of 35% said that they were under 18 when they had that particular story. And the rest was kind of just evenly distributed. So there was one story that came in about a girl who went to a lake. She went vacationing with her parents, and she saw her dad out in this rowboat. She was a toddler, so she just kind of took off down the pier and thought that she'd float through the air to him right there in the middle of the lake, but actually that's not what happened. She fell into the water. She started tumbling around, started to drown, swallowing water, saw her body. Nearby, she heard this voice and saw this big yellow light, and it said, "It's not your time yet. You have too much to do." The next thing she knew, she was on the ground, breathing air, her father over her. You can imagine the situation. Years later, she got her PhD, and for the last many decades, she has taught people how to express themselves through their words. She never forgot the words she heard. And now she helps people express themselves. So this experience motivated evolution by helping people express their creativity and their inner selves. For this conclusion, with that under 18, I had to wonder, why was that? Was it kind of age versus experience? How many did they have? How did that all work? When really, I don't know, could it just be that with child's eyes, we do see the numinous more easily, more readily? That anything is possible. So for the WHO, people had the stories at under 18, and that was the most significant one for them to share. The third one, I thought people would just be kind of vibing and relaxed and feeling really good, and they would just kind of soak right into whatever was happening. And again, I was surprised. So 19% said peaceful. I expected that, but 18% said anxious. In another result, 11% said excited, and 11% said sleeping. I couldn't believe it. There was one woman who was on a train, and she was headed to a very, very difficult time. She was going to meet a lot of people. It was a very, very stressful appointment that she had to get to. She saw it all in her mind's eye unfold in a way that she totally did not anticipate. And when she got there, everything happened exactly as she had seen it. She said she was absolutely shocked. And had that happened without her foreseeing it, she would have been even more floored. It would have really devastated her. But she was able to handle it peacefully. She said she just left and everything was fine. We have to wonder, did the train, the motion of the train, the sound of the train, did that induce something? Did that induce this experience? Something called synesthesia, where there's a sensory application that then induces something else. We don't know. But what we do know is that there was a synergy that happened. And in that synergy, she stepped across this clairvoyant threshold. She also said this is the only time this has happened to her in her life, but we only need one time to know it. So again, a balanced population. I was very, very glad to see that and to also realize that there are different doors through which people enter these relationships. There's not one, but many. They're going to be different for every person and different every time. I really liked this quote from Lynn McTaggart, that we are not indivisible from our environment. We are part of this earth. We are the goman or doman. This word means human and is from the Indo-European language from 5,500 years ago, really long time ago. Human meaning earthling or earthly being. So we are here on this earth to experience. We are here in this nearness, in this earth, to connect with the numinous, to that which we may not be able to define, but to which we all nod. So the when, the synergy plus the threshold. For number 4, okay, so our bodies are really good at storing memories. We can remember how certain things in our lives made us feel. If you go back to a big circumstance in your life, you can really recall it. So I figured that people would have these really important events stored in their bodies somehow. And I thought perhaps it would be kind of within their soul. And the majority did come back saying that 46%, it is in their soul awareness as a consciousness. Now, consciousness is a word that we could define all day long, and if we asked everyone in here what it means to them, everyone would say something different. But just quickly, with these two, you can see they both kind of offer this movement, a sense of movement, life force flowing, a weave of threads. Eric Nod Hansen, an author, wrote about imperience, how to know consciousness, to have the experience of it, we have to actually experience it within our consciousness. And this concept was supported by Dr. Charles Tart, a transpersonal psychologist, who said that we have to define it for ourselves. It's only by living it that we know it. So there was a story of a man who was in meditation, a regular meditator for many, many years. He went into a quiet morning, and before he knew it, he was in this white field of complete magnificence, aware of himself, yet completely out there, in peaceful, beautiful glory, connected with everything. He lost all sense of time, and it was one of the most beautiful experiences of his life. When he came back into his awareness in the room, it was dark, it was still pre-dawn, and only a couple of minutes had passed on the clock. So how this experience motivates evolution is to remind us to go there again and again. He's a regular meditator still, and goes there and practices, and goes there and practices. We can't just walk and go to running, to a marathon. We have to go there every day. It's a great reminder. So Edgar Cayce said that we are each a miniature copy of the universe, and that our job here on this physical plane is to develop our abilities and to expand in every way. But I'm sure we can also all feel into the challenges of everyday life. Not every day is easy. We have challenges that come up, issues, things to deal with, paying the bills, whatever it is. So as part of my project, in one of the appendices, I put together a little set of 8 focus cards. So hopefully there'll be a benefit. You can reflect on experiences that you've had, and perhaps see if there's more of a message in it for you. So in conclusion to that hypothesis is the aim or the ideal for an integrated wholeness within ourselves, with our world. Our own circulatory system is a great reminder of this kind of spin, pin, pulse, right? Our blood goes through our bodies, our hearts contract, pin it, and there's this pulse, and it keeps going and going. And it's the same thing with going to this kind of field of consciousness, this attainment. We have to set the ideal for it, and we have to practice going there. It's like when you have a friendship, you don't just say, okay, we're friends now, and that's it. You keep going, you check in, you go, you go. It takes effort, and we're all tasked with it. So people save these experiences, by and large, within their soul. All right, so we've all heard the phrase, like, timing is everything. Well, I thought with that people would say that synchronicity and serendipity were really going to be an important aspect to these experiences. But boy, was I wrong. So 51% actually said there was no correlation at all. I was really shocked again. There was a story of a woman who was in yoga, and she lost all sense of time, really slipped into relaxation through child's pose. She was completely alone, and all of a sudden she felt this large hand on her back, and she said it felt like God's hand, that there was energy flowing through this hand into her spine. It was a very emotional experience for her, but she felt very healed. Something within her was changed from this experience. She went on to become a very gifted medical intuitive. She helps to heal people now. So this experience motivated, opened, unfolded evolution by her own healing, and now she heals others. You can see that there's a trend here. People don't always just have the experience and do nothing. They have to live that vision. So yeah, timing is not at all what we think it is. So that 51% said no correlation, and 41% of them said that time did not exist. So the how, these kind of no time shifts or forever time, it's called a lot of different things. But clearly something changes dimensionally for the person. For number 6, stories are our greatest influence all throughout history, oral tradition, people share and people share. I recently read an article that said that when you tell someone just data points, it only activates 2%, or not 2%, pardon me, 2 points of their brain. However, if you give them a story and you actually let them live it through your story, you show them pictures, or you activate some sort of emotion within them, it activates 7 parts of their brain. So it's a very, very valuable thing for us to share our experiences. So I thought it would help people bond and learn and be open to other possibilities of what could happen. So when I asked this question, why did you tell others? 29% said they needed to share it. That was the greatest number. To help others and for understanding, we're closely there too, but to share it was number 1. In another related question, I asked with whom? And there were a lot of responses, but not surprisingly, family and friends were at the top of the list. And that has to do with trust. We'll get into that. So there was a story of a woman who had a dream. She woke up and told her husband about it, and she was flinging her arms out like wings. She was perspiring. She was very, very upset. She said, we were going fast, and there were steel beams in a Red Cross room. That day was September 10th, 2001. And we can all remember that footage the next day. And she said when she and her husband turned on the television and saw this on the TV, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Now, she did not have the context to know what was happening. But what this did show is that she was able to see the unseen. And it's a reminder to us to be open to that, to allow that to happen if it can. And that we are all so sensitive, such sensitive beings. I was very, very touched and humbled when 12% said that they had never shared this story with anyone before. It really felt to me that meant they trusted the process. And again, just such an honor. Most of those people were from group 3. Some of the people that said not sure did go on to complete the survey saying, I don't know if this is really one, but this is what happened. And I haven't told anyone. So that was really, really something special. 26% said there are still things they can't tell anybody. And that was evenly distributed, more or less, over groups 1, 2, and 3. We ask ourselves what is real. We question ourselves all of the time. Back in June, I was having a conversation with Dr. Henry Reed when he was visiting campus. We were talking about this project. And he said that he had had a conversation with Rhea White a number of years ago. And they were talking about this exact thing. And she said, well, if something has the power to change your life, isn't that real? And, we see this in our culture all the time. Once something has a name and it's acceptable, people do it more and more. Meditation, mindfulness, all fantastic things, fantastic vehicles to really connect with our inner selves. And I find that familiarity actually breeds fluency. It's like when you study a language. If you just study the book, that's wonderful. If you can converse with people in a class, that's even better. If you can get to the country and immerse yourself in the culture, that's the best yet. So the same thing with these experiences. When you have them, you become more fluent with yourself and with others. So the conclusion is a trust of self, to not deny if this experience happens to you, to take it in as part of yourself, to trust others, to say, like, I have this very precious part of me and I'd like to share it with you. And again, to assimilate it, to really live it, as we saw in some of those other examples. So there was a story of a man who had a dream. And he saw his 17-month-old daughter playing with another little girl. Now, he and his wife were expecting another baby at the time, but he saw this little girl so clearly. It was like he knew her. So a couple of months later, when she was born, and he looked at her for the first time, he said he was absolutely shocked. He recognized the soul of this little girl. This was the girl he saw in the dream. It didn't have to do with how she looked. It had to do with the spirit. Absolutely incredible. And it actually makes me a little teary-eyed, because to know that this connection exists across all realms, that we can have these experiences, we can know these things. This is how we unroll what needs to be, that which is bound, that which keeps us connected to each other. So in the iconic book, The Divine Within by Aldous Huxley, I love this. He says we're knowers all the time. We do. We're knowers, but sometimes we don't know it. So it's a good reminder to pay attention, to be open to what can happen. And with that, I asked the why to people. Why do you think that this experience most happened? 33% said it was needed, 25% that they were open to it. So a full 58% basically say that it's something essential to their beings. With all of the stories, there were certain aspects. Some were very positive. There was one person who literally heard the music of the spheres. Such a beautiful story. Some people had a more neutral story or kind of questioning, and there were some that were more challenging, as we've heard. The interesting thing is the after effect of all of these stories are all completely into the positive. Really, really incredible that these transform people in this way if they choose to live it as a part of their life. In medicine or in health and wellness, we always look to an outcome that's going to give the most optimal health, right? So it made me wonder about this kind of EHE dosage. Like, how do these things come to us? And I thought of that kind of thing you'll see when a doctor writes a script, PRN. It stands for pro nata, or as needed. So I thought to myself, maybe that's what happens. They come to us as needed, a little bit, almost like a homeopathic remedy, as we can manage it, as we need it, perhaps as others need it, perhaps as our world or universe needs it. Maybe that's how they come. So we answered the why. The people needed it, they were open to it, and it was essential to their being. And with the last hypothesis, I wondered about death and near death as a proof of life. I'd had this conversation with a few people, and they said, these are proof of life. So this was not actually a question that I asked, but what I did was a search through all of the text. I searched for words like death, near death, dying, dead, deceased, a whole range. Now, 20% used at least one of those words. And you think, well, that's not so many. But if you think, like, maybe if there's 50 chairs in here, you think 10 chairs, that's actually fairly significant if you think about it that way. With death, we wonder what happens when we die. The importance of connection is highlighted in this next story. And I'd like you to think about anything that feels familiar to you in it, how you can connect to it.
I went to a small spirit circle expecting nothing, although I was open to what was supposed to happen. About 20 minutes into it, the medium connected with Mary, my mother. He went on to tell me 5 or 6 rather meaningful and very personal things about her and what she had to say to me. At the time, I was shocked. As time went on, and I thought about it more, that's when it affected my life. Now, I tell anyone who will listen, the experience feels that important.
I love that closing scene. It's very sweet. So this person received incontrovertible, evidential information that was channeled through a medium from a deceased mother to her living son. As he said in the story, he now tells anyone who will listen because it feels that important to him that people know that this really can happen. It also reminds us that our time in this world, in this life, is only a part of the whole. But we have to be a part of it. We have to participate with this. He could have said, oh, no, that's not true. He looked at my stuff online or something like that. But he really, really felt that it was authentic and real. So I wanted to touch quickly on free will because we have to, again, choose to participate. We have to be a part of it ourselves. So I thought of the phrase sine qua non, the Latin term for essential, which is actually a feminine phrase, the qua feminine. I thought, well, that's really good, kind of creative, feminine. By free will, we choose, we create what's to happen. But how do we balance that? Perhaps, I thought, with the will, which I put there as sine qua non for masculine, to balance it. The will, that drive gets us there. The free will allows us to create in that moment. We have such an opportunity in our lives to live in harmony if we choose to. We have to try and try again and know that we do depend on each other in every step. So what comes next? Well, you can see that my puzzle piece turned into this sparkling gift. We've brought the pieces together. And a lot of times when these experiences happen, people think, oh, this was a gift just for me. This happened just for me. And maybe that is true. But maybe it's also true that it's a gift for other people as well, that it's a gift for the world, for the universe, for our earth. It's something to think about. So we have to work to strike the balance. Now, I recently heard where we are kind of like the average of the 5 people to whom we're closest in our lives. So take a second and just think about the 5 people to whom you are heart closest in this world and kind of feel them around you. Okay, feel what that's like. It feels nice, very comfortable, comforting. And then think about what it feels like. Some of you may or may not know each other, but think about the 5 people who are sitting closest to you. Feel into what that feels like. It might feel a little bit different. Just notice the difference. We have to strike this balance. Everything we do impacts other people. Did you ever walk into, a really joyous occasion like a wedding or birthday or something? Oh, everyone's really excited. Or if you walk into a room where there's been, some tragic news, everyone's really down. We can really, really feel each other. So important what we carry in our days, in our life, and in our world. We are responsible for our own balance, though. We can help and support our friends and loved ones, but everyone is responsible for his or her own balance. Very interestingly, everyone says, like the inner world, going to the inner world. Well, the word internal is actually Sanskrit, antar, meaning middle. So it's not actually this internal ground, it's this middle ground, again, pointing to balance in all ways. And what comes next again? To live our love and light. We have so much to give the world. We all have this inner fire. Keep stoking it. Keep living it. And when you have the vision, live that as fully as you can. To remember always that we have to take the journey ourselves, but we don't do it alone. To try to be as compassionate and understanding and loving as possible. And to embrace this ideal of fluency. To really try to become fluent with ourselves, to really understand ourselves as best we can, understand each other, our beautiful earth, whatever is above and around us, and this world. We do this through our experiences and live as boldly and fully as you can. This is Omnifluence, how we motivate evolution through our experience. Thank you.